Live from Brisbane, 7 News with Kendall Gilding.
Good afternoon. Our top stories this Wednesday. Power Play, Australia's energy market operator, has suspended the electricity spot market. We'll bring you the latest on this breaking news as it happens. A pay rise for struggling Australians. The Fair Work Commission resets the minimum wage, raising it by $40 a week. Brisbane residents hit with the biggest rates hike in more than a decade after council hands down a record $4 billion budget. And moving out, the Cambridges to leave their London apartment to be closer to the Queen. Good afternoon. We begin with breaking news. The electricity spot market has been suspended in the 5 eastern states, including Queensland. The Australian energy market operator had made the call this afternoon, giving it control of directing energy supplies to power grids across the country. We'll have more on this development shortly. Millions of Australians will get a $40 a week pay rise after the Fair Work Commission agreed to lift the minimum wage. The decision was made so those on the lowest incomes can keep up with the cost of living. Jennifer Beshwati has the details.
Well, some good news for workers today. The national minimum wage will soon increase by $40 a week, or just over $1 an hour. This takes the minimum wage to $21.38 per hour, or $812.60 per week. It's an increase of 5.2%, which is above headline inflation. It means about 180,000 workers on the minimum wage will get that full increase. A further 2.5 million workers on award wages will also get a pay rise, many coming into effect from July 1. But for people in hospitality, tourism and aviation, it won't start until October. The unions are pleased with the decision. They had asked for 5.5%, but say it's a fair and reasonable increase and will help struggling individuals keep up with the rising cost of living. Business groups disagree. They believe the increase is too high and many business owners won't be able to afford paying staff.
Extra $40 a week is going to make a significant difference. Especially if you consider the basics, because if you're on the absolute minimum, all of your wage is spent on the basics, going to mean that people will actually be able to buy the food they need for their families.
That cost will be an extra $7.9 billion hitting the bottom line of affected businesses as a result of this decision. That will add to inflationary pressures. They are going to have to look at passing on those costs to consumers.
This was the bedrock of the Labor election campaign. They argued that wages should not go backwards to keep up with inflation. One of the government's first acts since coming to power was to write to the Fair Work Commission to increase wages. Speaking in Gladstone today after a cabinet meeting, the Prime Minister welcomed the decision, saying hard-working, low-income earners will now have some extra cash in their pockets.
It makes a difference to people who are struggling with the cost of living. The truth is that many of those people who are on the minimum wage are the heroes who saw us through the pandemic. These workers deserve more than our thanks. They deserve a pay rise, and today they've got it.
People will be seeing in their bank accounts what the change of government means. People will be seeing in their bank accounts a wage increase that never would have happened back when we had a government committed and determined to keep wages deliberately low.
Politically, this is a big win for Anthony Albanese, who can now say that he's delivered on his election promise.
Well, despite the minimum wage boost, there could still be tough times ahead. The country's top banker has warned we need to prepare for interest rates higher than we've seen for 3 decades. Chris Reason is following the developments.
Good afternoon, that's right. It's rare that we see the Reserve Bank Governor make any public statements at all unless there is extreme significance, and they certainly were that. Predictions of a 7% inflation rate and also threats of spiking interest rate hikes to bring the economy back under control, with the costs of living now soaring on many levels, including power and petrol, groceries and gas. We've seen the inflation rate hit 5.1% in the March quarter, but the prediction was that that number would surge. Dr Lowe saying that it would reach 7% by the end of the year, pushed along by COVID supply issues, the Ukraine war, and now today's minimum wage increase also adding to inflation pressures as well. Of course, interest rate rises are the key tool for the RBA to try and cool the economy. We've already seen them raise rates twice in the past 2 meetings, lifting the official rate from its pandemic low of 0.1% up to 0.85%. Those hikes quickly passed on by the retail banks. But Dr Lowe said in an overnight ABC interview he needed to, quote, do what was necessary to bring that inflation number back down.
Inflation's high. It's too high. At the moment it's 5%, and by the end of the year I expect inflation to get to 7%. That's a very high number, and we need to be able to chart a course back to 2 to 3% inflation. It's unclear at the moment how far interest rates will need to go up to get that. I think it's reasonable that interest rates the cash rate gets to 2.5% at some point.
Now, Dr Lowe said he realised the impact the rate hikes would have on mortgage holders, but also noted that many Australians relying on savings would welcome an interest rate increase. His prediction was that the bank's measures, tied in with global factors, would start to see inflation numbers come back down off a peak between January and March next year. Back to you.
It's the news many expected, but now it's been confirmed. Brisbane residents are facing a rates hike of almost 5%. Council handed down its budget today with a record $4 billion spend. Joel Dry was there.
Well, City Hall has handed down its budget, and no surprises, it includes a hefty rise to the rates bill of Brisbane residents. In fact, it's the highest increase seen in almost a decade. On average, Brisbane homeowners will see their rates increase by 4.93%. That equates to an increase of about $85 a year, about $1.63 per week. In announcing the spike, the Lord Mayor trumpeted the fact it's below the Brisbane inflation rate of 6% and lower than other southeast Queensland councils. That doesn't make it any easier for people suffering huge cost of living pressures.
By pausing projects, by reprioritising projects and focusing on the flood recovery, we've been able to keep the rate outcome lower than it otherwise would be.
Council itself is also suffering cost of living issues, particularly after the $300 million impact from floods. The cost of materials for repairs also skyrocketing.
Bitumen is up 48% in the last 2 years. Concrete and steel are up. Fuel is up. Pretty much all of the things that we have to pay for in order to provide services are increasing in cost.
The budget has for the first time pushed past $4 billion, but this year there are very little new projects to highlight. But a new cycling and skating track in Murarrie did make the cut. Housing affordability gets a mention, including a new rate category for short-term accommodation operators, things like Airbnb. It's a bid to push more homes into the rental market. The Lord Mayor says Brisbane is a victim of its own success, now the fastest growing capital city in the country, but he hopes this year's hefty rate hike is an outlier and they come back to more normal levels next year.
5 juveniles have been arrested, accused of crashing a stolen car on the Gold Coast. Georgia Costi, they were allegedly seen driving dangerously across several suburbs.
Yes, Kendall. Police say the Jeep was stolen from a home in Emerald Lakes, but had been seen driving in a convoy with a stolen BMW. A truck driver attempted to trap the vehicle after it was seen in a Benogan street, but the car managed to evade police, who continued to track it. The occupants had been spotted allegedly trying to break into other homes in Varsity Lakes, but eventually the driver lost control, driving up an embankment in Coomera. That's where 5 juveniles, including one as young as 13, were arrested. Police are still searching for that other vehicle.
Georgia Costi live from Surfers Paradise, thank you. The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge and their 3 children are reportedly leaving their London apartment to be closer to the Queen. Europe Bureau Chief Hugh Whitfeld reports.
William and Kate have spent the day with the families of the victims of the Grenfell Tower fire tragedy 5 years after the deadly blaze tore through an apartment block here in London. As reports emerged, they're preparing to leave their Kensington Palace base, not far from Grenfell Tower, for Adelaide Cottage, a 4-bedroom house in the Windsor Great Park, very close to the Queen at Windsor Castle, close to Eton College, where George and Louis might be heading one day, of course, where William and Harry went to high school, and close to the Middletons, Kate's parents, who live not far away in Berkshire. It would require a change in schools for the 3 Cambridge children. And this cottage doesn't need staff and it doesn't need renovations either, so it's considered the perfect fit for the young family. Meantime, a short carriage ride away from Windsor, Charles and Camilla have led the Royal Pack at Royal Ascot, where racing has returned. They might have even watched an Aussie winner today. There was no sign of Her Majesty, though. Many of the Queen's horses running at Ascot later in the week.
Well, let's get a check on the weather now. Tony, looking beautiful where you are this afternoon, enjoying the sunshine out at Shorncliffe.
Good afternoon, Kendall. Yes, no complaints with today's offers. It was too hard to pass up this little spot here, right by Shorncliffe Pier. A steady stream of locals going for a walk and enjoying those last few warming rays of sunshine today. While the skies are mostly clear at the moment, we did have a bit of fog around this morning. It was mostly thin fog or mist through the Brisbane CBD. Thicker out in the west. It's all thanks to this extra humidity, which is making us feel a bit warmer. As that cools down at night, well, it condenses into cloud. We should have some more fog around tonight. Another thing to watch for at the moment is some very high tides. They're not technically king tides for many spots, but they will be within a centimetre or two of the highest tide of the year later tonight. The time varies a bit around the Bayside here, just after 10:30 p.m. in Brisbane, just after 11 p.m. Either way, worth avoiding parking in low-lying areas if you are out and about later tonight. Now, back to today's temperatures. Inland spots down into single figures, while coastal spots in the low teens overnight. That's thanks to that extra humidity. Today, pretty comfortable, even in the shade. Archerfield and Beaudesert pushing up to 24 degrees and 23s by the Bayside here, then even warmer tomorrow. Kendall, I'm off to enjoy this last bit of sunshine. I'll be back soon with tomorrow's forecast.
Perfect afternoon for it, Tony. Enjoy. We'll see you soon. Ukraine's cries for help are growing more desperate. Its troops are struggling to hold ground as Russia tightens its grip in the country's east. More on our breaking news story. The energy market operator steps in amid the power crisis, and a jailed Kremlin critic goes missing.
In 7 News, a pay rise for Queenslanders, how much you'll get, and good news on supermarket prices. Full details on Brisbane's rate rise, the Big Brother tactics Bunnings and Kmart are using on customers, plus how to get the best power deal now, and Brisbane's mumpreneurs and their family-friendly careers. 7 News at 6.
Well, for days we've been warned of blackouts and load shedding as power generators chose to withhold electricity from the grid. Samantha Heathwood is covering this story. Sam, just in the last hour, there've actually been extraordinary moves to secure our power supply.
Yeah, there have been, Kendall. All week we've been told to limit our power use, turn off unused appliances. But this afternoon there's been a major breakthrough. The Australian energy market operator taking the extraordinary step to suspend the energy market across the entire East Coast as it tries to calm the increasingly volatile power grid. It had been capping prices at $300 a megawatt an hour since the start of the week, and some generators had withdrawn their power from the grid, but AEMO overrode that and forced them to supply electricity.
They directed generators to bid into the market and to generate more than 5,000 megawatts across the national energy market.
Now, just moments ago, they've taken the extraordinary step of suspending the market altogether, securing our power supply and ensuring the lights stay on in Queensland homes tonight. Kendall, this is developing. We'll have all you need to know, including how long the suspension is likely to last, in 7 News tonight at 6.
Full updates then. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
Well, turning to the war in Ukraine, soldiers are pleading for more equipment and ammunition from the West as they fight off Russian forces. Ukrainian officials say more than 100 soldiers are killed every day.
American symbol, American weapon. Ukrainian troops try out new equipment, U.S.-supplied M4 rifles fresh out of the box. Away from the front lines, these soldiers are preparing to join the battle raging in the east. Ukrainian forces are slowly losing ground in the battle for the eastern Donbas region. Morale here is high, yet no one believes these rifles will halt the Russian advance. Ukrainian officials say Russian artillery outnumbers their artillery at a ratio of perhaps more than 10 to 1.
I can protect my comrades, but unfortunately I can't clear my country from invaders using only these rifles. So we need more artillery.
The US and its allies have delivered advanced weapon systems to Ukraine, and more are on the way. But the army here is losing men at an alarming rate, more than 100 killed in action every day, according to Ukrainian officials. We need a basic minimum to avoid more casualties. Artillery, smart weapons, radar, drones, and people to train us, says the commander, Lieutenant Alexander, a veteran of the French Foreign Legion. We've shown we will fight. We will learn to use these weapons. And that will take time. And time is a luxury this nation at war cannot afford.
Jailed Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny has gone missing from the prison where he's been serving time, according to close associates. They hope it's because he's being transferred to another prison, which could take days or weeks. Some of our major retailers are using Big Brother tactics to snoop on their customers. We'll tell you why next. And in sport with Webby, the Blues in a quandary over their Origin 2 squad.
In 7 News at 6, our power failure. How did it come to this? The action plan for blackouts if they're needed. The suburbs least likely to lose the lights and how you find the best deals now. Plus, Brisbane's mumpreneurs building their own family-friendly careers from home. 7 News is Queensland's news.
3 of Australia's major retailers are under fire after it was revealed they're using facial recognition technology in their stores. As Evan Batten explains, most of us weren't aware it was happening.
Yeah, well, anyone who's walked into a major retailer and wondered how they're using their security camera vision that they're recording of you will be alarmed to learn that a number of major retailers are now admitting to using facial recognition software. Bunnings and Kmart are among them, who say at this stage it's only for a trial. Choice asked 25 major retailers if they were using facial recognition technology after a tip-off by one of its members. They admitted to scanning the facial features of every customer who walks into the store and cross-checking it against a list of known individuals who may have been suspected of shoplifting or causing trouble in other ways.
That does raise a lot of questions about the accuracy of this technology. We don't know how accurate it is.
And Choice is ultimately asking for an investigation to be carried out by the Office of the Australian Information Commissioner to see if any breaches have occurred. Bunnings, in response, has said it's disappointed by Choice's research here, calling it an inaccurate characterisation of Bunnings' use of facial recognition technology. It's only used in selected stores, it says, and only to keep team members and customers safe. Kmart says much the same sort of thing. It stores the data only for 30 days or so. The Australia Institute, Anne, says it should all stop now until legal protections can be put in place.
Webby joins me now for a quick check of Wednesday sport.
Thank you, Kendall. Hello, everyone. The Maroons have dodged bullets ahead of Origin 2 in Perth. Ryan Pappenhausen has COVID, ruling him out of Friday's Broncos clash, while Latrell Mitchell's no chance of playing in Perth, according to his coach. The Big Bunny hasn't played for 10 weeks with injury and is also just out of isolation.
It's not about whether he's playing Origin or he's playing for us. It's about whether he's fit to play rugby league at NRL level, let alone Origin level, and he's not.
Demetrio believes Mitchell will be right for Parramatta in round 16 early next month. He turns 36 in a matter of months, but David Warner's still as lively as ever.
Oh, that's unbelievable! What a catch that is by David Warner.
Ashton Agar couldn't believe his eyes. Pat Cummins went wicketless on his return from a hip injury in the one-day series opener against Sri Lanka. Chasing a rain-reduced total of 282, Glenn Maxwell kept his cool after a mini batting collapse, hammering an unbeaten 80 off 51 balls to get Australia home by 2 wickets. An English batting collapse looked on the cards on the final day of the second test against New Zealand at Trent Bridge. At 3 for 56, up stepped Johnny Bairstow.
Stand and deliver, Johnny Bairstow.
Chasing 299 off 72 overs, Bairstow smashed England's second fastest test ton from 77 balls. His 136, along with an unbeaten 75 from skipper Ben Stokes, guided the hosts to a series-clinching 5-wicket win. Chris Waller's Nature Strip has enhanced his standing as the world's best sprinter. With royalty watching at Royal Ascot, James McDonald piloted the Everest winner to victory in the Group 1 King's Stand Stakes. But unfortunately, one caller botched his name.
Nature Stripe leading to Acklam Express in second place. Twilight Calls coming home in third position. But it is the great Australian sprinter, Nature Stripe and James McDonald. And look how far they've won by.
It's the first Aussie winner at Royal Ascot since Black Caviar in 2012. And we'll have plenty more sport in our 6 p.m. bulletin.
Thanks, Webby. We'll see you then. Time to see what else is coming up in 7 News at 6 and our Gold Coast Bulletin. Let's bring in Max and Amanda. Max, wages are rising.
So they say, Kendall, the minimum wage will rise from July 1. So what does that mean for Queenslanders struggling to make ends meet? We have the very latest. Plus, how supermarket giants are helping ease the cost of living pressures. Also, the staged power crisis continues to shock households. The market operator now stepping in. We look at the best ways to reduce your electricity bill and the simple trick to make sure you're not paying too much. Also tonight we meet the mums who've started their own family-friendly businesses and created empires in the process. Their tips to build a booming trade and balance parenthood.
We're all going to need a side hustle soon, Max, with this cost of living pressure. Amanda, what do you have for us in the Gold Coast News at 5:30?
Well, Kendall will have more on that wild card chase at Benogan. We have exclusive pictures and details in our 5:30 bulletin. Also, all of the reaction from yesterday's budget announcement, how it will impact retirees and older residents living here on the coast, and the historic find at a Southport hotel. What was discovered during renovations? Kendall, it is a bar with plenty of secrets. We'll have all of those stories and more.
Thank you, Amanda, and thanks, Max. Our Gold Coast viewers are off to the chase. Join Amanda and Steve for your local news at 5:30 and Sharon and Max at 6 o'clock. For the rest of Queensland, hospital system under strain. The new figures showing just how much pressure our hospitals are under. Amber Heard's first interview since losing her defamation trial against Johnny Depp. And later after the weather, Queensland's top models put their best foot forward for a spot on the Ekka runway.
Live from Brisbane, 7 News with Kendall Gilding.
Making news this Wednesday, Australia's energy market regulator has suspended the electricity spot market this afternoon. This gives it complete control of directing supplies from energy operators to the power grid to ensure the supply in Queensland and other eastern states. Homeowners will be hit by the largest increase in council rates for 12 years. The general rate will rise by 4.93%, with much of the $4 billion budget to be spent on suburban projects. And the Australian Fair Work Commission has given our lowest paid workers a pay rise of $40 a week. The 5.2% increase is just above the current inflation rate. The state's health crisis is deepening, with the rates of ambulance ramping climbing to alarming new levels. Advocates are calling for a huge health spending spree, fearing the issue will only become worse. Garth Burley reports.
This paints another grim picture for the state of our health system, with new figures revealing more than half of ambulances were ramped at 9 Brisbane hospitals in March. The Princess Alexandra, Redland and Logan hospitals were the worst, with the rates of ramping all above 60%, clogging emergency departments and delaying patients from critical care.
What it means is if a Queenslander turns up at any hospital in Brisbane, there is a greater than 1 in 2 chance that you'll be left waiting longer at the end of a ramp.
Well, we know there's pressures on health systems around Australia and around the world.
The union says it's putting incredible strain on our frontline health staff, and many are feeling burnt out.
A number of shifts go unfilled every day and night because people, they feel the fatigue of the kind of work they're doing.
Staff shortages, overcrowded beds and COVID waves are being blamed for the ramping crisis. Now a surge in the flu threatens to cause another headache. More than 8,000 cases were recorded in the past fortnight alone, but they are dropping. Advocates are calling for a health spending blitz in next week's state budget.
The local share market lost further ground today, the ASX 200 closing down more than 7% in the past 5 days. That's a new low for at least the past year. And as Network Finance editor Gemma Acton reports, it's now hurting our super returns.
Good afternoon. After all of yesterday's share market drama, today was a quieter day, but usually after you see a very steep sell-off, the next day you're looking to see a recovery of sorts. The ASX 200 could not deliver that today. It was another down day, with the index closing down around 1.3%. Some of the hardest hit stocks yesterday were under pressure again today, including Afterpay owner Block and online jobs platform Seek. However, mining giant Fortescue, which lost 6% yesterday, has now clawed back some of those losses. Although all else equal, rising interest rates help banks to grow their profits. It has been a tough week for financial services companies. They've fallen around 12% since last week's RBA rate rise. That's on fears stretched consumers will struggle to pay off their debts, and the property market is expected to take a hit.
If you're positioned with the miners and the oil and gas companies, you're doing very well, and I think they'll continue to do well into this recovery.
Super experts say after the recent bumpy ride for markets, any positive returns for the average super fund gained earlier in the year could be washed out by June 30th.
We've seen a lot of ups and downs during the financial year, and it looks like we're ending in negative territory if the current trend continues.
That follows a return of close to 18% last year and an annual average return of around 7% since the super system was first launched.
A gas emergency has created major traffic delays in Ipswich after a truck spilled its load of gas cylinders on the Warrego Highway. Some of the bottles began leaking, prompting fears of an explosion. Traffic was disrupted and nearby residents were warned to stay indoors until the threat was resolved after more than 7 hours. The spirit of giving is alive and well in Brisbane today as Queenslanders dig deep for the RBWH Foundation's annual Giving Day. The foundation funds vital medical research and helps improve patient care.
It's a day of excitement, joy and the generosity of so many people to make this hospital even better.
Triathlete Lex Leary, who's recovering from a brain injury suffered in a training crash, was among those helping raise money. Every donation until midnight will be matched dollar for dollar. You can go to the 7 News Facebook page to donate. Amber Heard is refusing to back down after losing her defamation trial against ex-husband Johnny Depp. In her first sit-down interview since the trial, she blamed social media for swaying the verdict. US Bureau Chief Ashley Mullaney reports.
After a jury ruled that Amber Heard defamed her ex-husband Johnny Depp by claiming he abused her, she has now levelled those allegations at him again.
To my dying day, will stand by every word of my testimony. We get the concept of free speech from the Greeks. My understanding of what that means is not just the freedom to speak. It's a freedom to speak truth to power. And that's all I spoke. And I spoke it to power, and I paid the price.
In a talk show interview this morning, Amber Heard said she was unfairly treated, that the social media onslaught must have impacted the verdict.
I think even the most well-intentioned juror, it would have been impossible to avoid this.
In this interview, she said that when you're living with violence, you have to learn to adapt. It was, at times, a tense interview. Savannah Guthrie, the breakfast show host, pointing out audio where Amber Heard could be heard saying that she started some of these fights.
What you would hear in those clips are not evidence of what was happening. It was evidence of a negotiation of how to talk about that with your abuser.
The actress admitted that the pair of them could have come across as Hollywood brats. She conceded that their relationship was toxic and ugly and that she wasn't entirely proud of her own behaviour in that relationship too. Still, she's been ordered to pay more than $10 million to Johnny Depp, money that her lawyers say she simply cannot afford to pay, and she plans to appeal the decision.
Happy the elephant will be staying at New York's Bronx Zoo. Animal rights activists had taken court action claiming Happy deserved some of the same rights as humans and should be set free. The court ruled while elephants are intelligent and deserve proper care and compassion, as an animal, Happy doesn't have a legal right to liberty. The judge says that if the petition had been successful, there could have been a flood of applicants to free animals, including pets and service animals. Well, let's check in on finance with Stephen Daglian at CommSec. Steve, as we heard, it's been another gloomy day on the markets.
Absolutely was. In fact, last week the market already was doing quite poorly because of Australia's biggest rate hike in 22 years. And now all the attention is being soaked up by what could happen in the US, where we might see the biggest rate hike in almost 28 years tomorrow morning in the United States. So that's receiving all the attention. It's part of the reason why our market is now on a 4-day losing streak, down about 7% over that period, down a little more than 1% just today. And we're also at a 16-month low as well. So today, all 11 sectors were down again, led by some of those interest rate sensitive areas of our market. Tech stocks, property companies in particular. We also had an update on consumer confidence today, too, in fact, which showed that people are not feeling great about their finances. It's not surprising with all the rate hikes that we've already had and also the cost of living, which is lifting. So many of the retailers continue to struggle, including JB Hi-Fi and also Harvey Norman. The banks actually started off quite well this morning, but they actually faded into the afternoon. And one of the better performers today was Telstra, also Brambles and the insurers. The Aussie dollar just above 69 US at the moment.
All right, Stephen Daglian, thank you so much. Well, nothing's more Aussie than a meat pie, but you won't believe what's just been judged the nation's best. A backyard fight between an emu and its owner goes viral. In a major shake-up of Queensland's COVID regulations, masks will no longer be required in airports. The Australian Health Protection Principal Committee has recommended abandoning the long-standing rule. Health Minister Yvette D'Arth backed the decision today, meaning mask wearing for travellers and airport staff will be scrapped at midnight on Friday. Masks will still be required on planes. Social media platform Instagram has unveiled a raft of new features to better protect its young users. The tools will give parents more access and insight into what their kids are up to.
Whether you're liking, commenting or simply scrolling online, Instagram's Family Centre aims to provide a safer experience for kids.
What they're really designed to do is get that balance right for young people, let them have autonomy and privacy in how they use Instagram.
Will the headline feature a supervision tool? Parents will be able to see who their children follow or are followed by, accounts they report directly to Instagram, and the exact time spent on the platform.
They can just say, hey, what's going on here, and really open up that conversation.
Sophie Spooner is a mum and stepmum of 4 based on Sydney's northern beaches.
I guess it's just trying to strike that balance between giving him freedom online, but then also being mindful that he might not have the maturity to deal with some of the issues that can come up.
Instagram will also have a feature called Family Hub that's built into the app where parents can access resources from Butterfly, Origin, Project Rocket, Reach Out and eSafety. This would include articles, videos and tips on topics like how to talk to young people about social media.
Your average teen uses around 4 social media services, and that actually increases as they get older. So by the time they're 16 or 17, it could be 5 or 6 social media platforms. So there has to be a time during the adolescence where parents regularly talk to their child about their social media use and they make decisions together.
Sean White, 7 News.
Australia's best pie has been announced and it's not what you might expect. There's no meat and sauce here, just 3 types of mushroom, cheddar, parmesan, herbs and a truffle filling wrapped in a golden flaky pastry. It's the first time a vegetarian pie has won the competition. It's produced by the Rolling Pin Bakery near Geelong. A backyard fight between an emu and its owner has become an internet sensation. The family has used an unusual weapon of choice to keep their pet at bay.
Bet you've never seen a pool noodle used like this. A Texas man has weaponized the noodle to fend off a pet emu named Cosmo.
I turned my back and wham, he bites me right on top of the head, and it hurts pretty good.
Toby and Michelle Wilson have had these 2 emus since they hatched 5 years ago. But once the birds had their own baby a few months ago, yikes! Cosmo has gotten protective and aggressive. He seems okay with Michelle.
Say hi.
But Cosmo's not saying hi to Toby. He's charging him and his mower. Even on foot, Toby has to keep looking over his shoulder. It takes twice as long to mow the pasture due to the constant jousting. Things escalated when Michelle made her husband a noodle hat, hoping the emu would be deterred.
I took a pool noodle, cut it in half, and just hot glued it to a cowboy hat.
The hat didn't help, but the videos have sure been a hit on TikTok. Toby says lots of commenters complain about his poor mowing technique, but you try mowing with a giant bird charging you.
I tell him, I say, look, bird, you better get away. Don't do it. Don't do it. I'm going to give you the noodle.
The noodle is all that stands between mowing and being mowed down.
A warmer day on the way. Tony's live with the forecast from Shorncliffe next. And the Queensland models going toe-to-toe for a spot on the Ekka runway.
This weather report brought to you by Bridgestone Select for tyres and car servicing.
Good afternoon, you're watching 7 News. Checking the weather now from beautiful Shorncliffe Pier. It's a little hidden gem by the bayside here, well worth an explore if you haven't been here before. There's a long walkway by the water and you can even watch the sun setting over the water from the pier at this time of year. Now, on to the weather. Today's satellite, we have a high pressure system out in the Tasman Sea that is driving our weather, pushing these relatively humid and mild northeast winds onto the coast. Elsewhere, a trough and low bringing some wet weather to Victoria and Tasmania. A bit of wet weather thanks to a couple of troughs lying near the Western Australian coast too. Tomorrow, through some subtle movements in those southern troughs, while we start to get slightly warmer westerly winds move in, bringing another small bump in temperatures and helping to clear skies through the course of the day. Around the nation, pack the brolly if you are headed to Adelaide, Melbourne or Canberra. Showers on the way there. Drying up in Perth and mostly sunny 20 degrees in Sydney. Back home to Queensland in the tropics, not too much change. A partly cloudy 25 degrees in Mackay, up to 27 and 28 in Townsville and Cairns. In the south, likely too warm for any frost of note, but we can expect plenty of fog, especially around the Wide Bay and Burnett. Then mostly sunny skies to follow, 7 to 19 in Toowoomba. Across the southeast, more early fog as usual, most likely inland, then clearing to sunny skies through the late morning and afternoon. A slightly warmer night and day, 11 to 23 at Logan. Ipswich could reach 25 degrees and tops of 22 or 23 degrees by the bayside here. And how is it looking towards the weekend? Kendall, I'll have the full forecast coming up at 6.
Looking forward to it. Thank you, Tony. Queensland's top models have battled it out for a place on the Ekka fashion runway. Set-up will begin at the RNA Showgrounds next week as organisers prepare to host their biggest yet.
It's just over 50 days until the Ekka gates open again, and 100 of the state's top models have put their best foot forward for a spot in the Natural Fibres fashion parades. 7 women and 3 men will be selected to represent Queensland fashion in front of thousands of showgoers. They'll hit the runway for 27 shows over the 9 days.
The theme of this year's parades is Stories of Style, and that tells the journey of the fibre to fashion story.
20-year-old model Annika Burgess says being selected would be a dream come true after a quiet 2 years due to COVID.
Just to be noticed and be seen there and be a part of it with the other beautiful girls and guys, just be amazing.
The lucky 10 will be selected in the next 2 days.
It's the largest audience of any fashion show in Queensland.
Ekka organisers say the setup at the showgrounds begins next week.
The first things to be built are the show bag pavilion and some of our animal nursery areas.
They're expecting record crowds of over 400,000 people at this year's event.
With the forced break over the last couple of years, we can't wait to bring the country and city back together.
Tickets are already available for purchase. If showgoers subscribe to the Ekka website, they can get 30% off their ticket from Friday.
And that's all we have time for this Wednesday. The Chase is coming up next, then 7 News at 6. I'm Kendall Gilding. I'll see you tomorrow.